I wish to welcome members of the media to the press conference this morning. We are happy that you accepted our invitation to be here. We've had presentations already this morning, so there will be no presentations by the members of the team. We will go straight to receiving your questions. In addition to the presenters this morning, we are joined by Mr. Sylvester Anthony, who provides legal counsel to the SIDF. I would like for you to identify yourself before you ask questions, please, and to allow as many persons as possible who wish to ask a question to do so. I will take only one question from you before accepting a second one. So we want to have as many persons speak as possible. So I'll invite you now to go right ahead and ask your questions.
Thank you very much. Val Henry, myview.com. This question is for Dr. Ballantyne. Earlier on in your presentation, you indicated that at some point in time you wish to have made a rebuttal to some of what you had been reading in the media and listening to in the electronic media as well. But for some reason, that did not materialize. And given all that, as you indicated, has been written about the SIDF, and as you stated, some of which with great inaccuracies, why did this event, or what motivated the decision to speak out, if I may term it as such, at this point in time?
I don't know if it's any initiative on my part to speak out. I was asked to make a presentation at this opening, and I thought it was opportune for me to take the opportunity to do so. I have spoken to persons in the media telling them about the inaccuracies and asked them, if you want the honest facts, why don't you come to me or invite me on your program? I have spoken to a number of persons. I've never been invited. No one has ever sought me out to get the facts, which I thought was very strange. But I kept seeing the inaccuracies in the media time and time again. So it's not that I have taken the opportunity to say these things, but I was invited to make a presentation and took that opportunity to do so.
Clive Bacchus, WinFM 98.9. Following up on my colleague's question, is this SIDF management and board committed to transparency? I asked that question because there are many questions that are out there. As you rightly said, some may be inaccurate, you have commentators and all that. But isn't there a responsibility of your organization to get in front of these utterances? Isn't there some responsibility on your part to clear the air where necessary? One, it is okay perhaps to say you could have done it, but you didn't do it. Why didn't you do it? And why is it that you're suggesting that a lot of inaccuracies are out there, but you kept silent?
I don't think it was my job to do it. I am not with the SIDF. I was with the Citizenship program. I administered the Citizenship program. I thought that as responsible journalists, that they would want to find out the truth and would seek the truth from the source. Rather than reporting hearsay and their own feelings about it. But no one ever approached me and asked me any questions about it.
Rita Bailey, Kita Vision Life. I'm not too bothered about what has gone before. I'm not interested. They are two different entities, the Citizen by Investment Program and the SIDF. And if people see them as one and the same, I think that should be corrected. However, my question is about is for the SIDF, and it is about your current program. You told us that you have been doing quite a bit of work with different sectors. I noticed, though, that you haven't seemed to be doing any work with the information communication technology sector, or also particularly with small and medium businesses, which everybody is telling us are the drivers of the economy. So I wondered what your plans were for working in those two areas.
Thank you for the question. Actually, that's a very timely question. And if you lived in our space up until 1 o'clock this morning, the technology option was on our website, and we removed it simply because, in fact, we had not done anything in that space. So indeed, you're right. We recognize the need to do something about technology, and that is exactly what this session today is meant to do, to bring out the thought around how we can spur innovation in technology and be able to identify initiatives that we can support in that area. So again, I want to thank you for having brought that to our attention, and we in fact are committed to not only technology but all sectors of the economy that will help to spur growth. Thank you.
Good day, Elke Hewlett from the St. Kitts Nevis Observer. Can you tell us who appoints the counselors for the board for the SIDF, and who makes the decisions? If it's not a government agency, who is responsible for oversight for that foundation? Well, the foundation, the counselors are appointed by the founder. The founder is the St. Kitts Nevis National Trust, and there's been no change in the counselors since the inception of the foundation. And so the counselors have remained as counselors since the foundation has started. And in addition to that, the accountability is really what happened today. It is simply coming back to the public. You have to appreciate that up until last month, we really had no presence, no operational presence, and so you had a set of counselors who were all full-time engaged in other means of employment. And I think it's applaudable that 6 weeks into operation, we can come to you with the level of information and transparency that we've been hearing and we think is necessary to put forward to the public and to you as the media.
Clive Bacchus again. I've read the folder you've given here, and it has a summary of what you presented. But what seems to be missing from the folder, and mind you, it's our job to ask these questions. I'm not being super critical, okay? We appreciate what you're doing, but I have to do my job and ask you the questions. There are two questions that are not answered here. One is, how do you access funding from the SIDF? What criteria do you need to meet? And secondly, how does the SIDF go about determining who gets what? Because you must have some competition for resources. So if you could tell me how you deal with that, that would help me as well. Thank you.
Okay, and those two very questions are answered on the website because we have gathered a list of questions like those that people have been asking. Really what will happen is that from the outputs today, we will get a roadmap as to what projects should be funded. And so once those projects are identified, people have an opportunity to apply for whether it's grant money, whether it's loan money, maybe it's equity assistance, but in whatever form. And then we will, based on the criteria that we would have established that would be known to the applicant, make a determination with the professional staff that we have on board that it meet the metrics that we've identified, the economic metrics, and then that project would be approved and subsequently supported by the SIDF.
Rita Bailey again. I'm getting a little confused. The SIDF has been in operation since 2007?
It was established in 2006, but it started operating in 2007.
Right. And you were saying that just 6 weeks ago, what was established?
Our offices. We actually started operating.
You operated a secretariat?
A secretariat, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, that clears something up. So I'm going to get back to partly what Clive's question about how persons can access the SIDF. It seems to me that so far, SIDF programs have been funding government-led programs.
Well, they have as it would have been indicated, the initiatives would have come to the SIDF through a ministry or an organization or an entity. We've approved them. We have not gotten requests for any outside of the Kittition Hill project, which we have supported, any other project like that we have had a chance to review. However, right. But with the new dispensation, that will become the case, that anybody can apply to us for consideration and a determination as to
But
how.
in 6 years, you've not gone to the public and said to the public that any individual who's wanting to seek funding to start a new business, a new thing, can access the SIDF. So it's only been funding government-led programs.
Correct. That is
Right.
correct.
Okay. So now you're saying that information to access SIDF for any individual in the country, they can access it via the website, and there will be a criteria with which you will make that determination.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Val Henry again from myvi.com. It was spoken earlier on about a number of loans that were provided. Just two questions. What interest rate is charged, and what has been the history so far in terms of repayment?
What specific programs are you referring to, Mr. Henry?
Well, I'm referring to what was said in one of the presentations, that a number of loans, I think it was your presentation.
We provided loans across different sectors. For example, in the construction sector, in the agricultural sector, in the education sector, so I'm just not sure. But I'll give you...
At what interest rate?
I'll walk you through. What we have done, we've worked with the Development Bank as the facilitator, who is primarily responsible for coordinating the FRESH program, and that program seeks to provide housing for new construction starts at 6%. You'd appreciate that rate doesn't exist in this market at all, and so the objective here is to get people working and to stimulate growth in the economy. With respect to the agriculture initiative, we have loans up to $25,000 at 0%, and beyond that it's at 3% for persons who want to start farms or to invest in their existing farms, etc. We have student housing, a student housing initiative, which really is a support initiative where we do not dictate the loan, the rate of interest on that loan, but what we do, we provide support that says a person cannot qualify because they don't have a signatory, and we will come in and pretty much underwrite the risk based on the bank-owned underwriting policies. So that does not mean it's a free-for-all, come and get it. The bank will still carry out its due diligence. And once it determines that an applicant is worthy of consideration or approval and lacks that sole criteria, which is the signatory, then we will then come in and assist.
So just for clarification, the determination of the rate of interest is by, for instance, the Development Bank for those funds that they're administering?
No, I told you what they were for the other programs. I said specifically on the student initiative, it is the bank's rate as usual. What we're simply doing is underwriting the risk for that particular program.
Okay. You also mentioned the one regarding the Nevis Arts Center, and I think you said recently.
Correct.
Could you just shed some light on that?
Well, you know how recently it is. The Arts Center was
not
open.
in terms of the center being open, I know that, but in terms of you providing a loan, I certainly don't.
We provided the assistance needed to complete the project. So, as you know, the Taiwanese embassy, the Republic of China and Taiwan provided the initial money, and we provided further assistance to complete the project.
Because there's no government oversight, Mr. Ballantyne, I think, said there's no government interference. Doesn't government, well, technically the Prime Minister, have the final say on who gets approval for citizenship? And if so, then isn't that considered influence? And who is going to be responsible when someone undesirable gets their hands based on on our passports or citizenship, based on, say, the due diligence not being properly conducted?
Well, we have every confidence in our due diligence. And the Prime Minister doesn't have a say in who gets or who doesn't get citizenship. The Cabinet sets a set of criteria. Those criteria are followed. A strict due diligence. The due diligence is not done by us. It's done by an international company, acceptable to most international countries and organizations. And it is based on that due diligence, and after we have done all the checks to find out source of funds and things like that, that the unit makes the decision to approve the citizenship. The Prime Minister only sees these files when they go to him for signature. He doesn't see them before, he doesn't see them after. He doesn't know who applied. He may know when somebody has been rejected because they have turned up in his office on many occasions to ask him to do something. You know, I remember one time a gentleman was rejected. The Prime Minister told him, he said, well, I can't do anything because Dr. Ballantyne said that you didn't meet the criteria. And he asked the Prime Minister, he said, how much would it take for Dr. Ballantyne to change his mind? Prime Minister say, you can't bribe that man. Can't bribe Dr. Ballantyne. You know? And there are agents who will tell you that we have rejected some of the richest persons in the world. If your due diligence came back that there is any element, any iota of corruption or crime, you don't come in here. You see, because we have to understand, you know, that St. Kitts is a small, very small country. To be up there with the type of people you heard the gentleman from Hendy and Partners talking about, Canada, the UK, and everybody, we have to be extremely careful. One bad apple in our program could make you and every one of us who are citizens of this country not being able to go to Canada without a visa, to Europe without a visa, or the US rejected. So we have to be very careful. This is not all about money. The integrity of the program must be maintained. And these countries, the IMF, the World Bank, everybody looks at this program under a fine-tooth comb. I don't think there is any program that has come under the scrutiny as the program in St. Kitts and Nevis. Because they can't understand how a small country like us could do that. You know, Dominica had a program. Now they can't go to Canada without a visa. Grenada had a program. They had to doubt it. Panama had one. Let me give you a little example. We rejected here the former head of state of one Asian country. Rejected him because the due diligence came back that while he was in office, he was engaged in corruption. He went to another country, an European country, and they gave him citizenship. You know what the EU did? They scrapped that program because they said a little country like St. Kitts, based on the same due diligence, rejected this man. How in God's name could you take him? This program was rejected. And again, we have to be very careful. On many occasions, the US, the British, the French, the Canadians have filed rogue applications to test our system. One time they came back to us and they said, you know, this application was just filed to see how you would deal with it. One of the richest persons you could think about who have residency in the United States, green card for years. But when the due diligence came back, we rejected him. You see? And so that is why, you know, I speak with this thing with such passion, because I know I have to protect you. Whoever is there has to protect you, and they have to protect themselves. Me, I just got citizenship of this country about 6 months ago. I'm not going to take citizenship of a country that I know the passport and the citizenship ain't worth anything. And whoever goes in that office there of the Citizenship by Investment unit knows that they have to protect people like you. They have to protect everybody. You know what would happen if we allow a terrorist to come here from the Middle East and they go for a visa and they get into the United States? Forget about it. So, you know, this is not something that people play politics with. This is not something that people can bribe you with. You can't pay for your citizenship. You can't pay for the passport of St. Kitts and Nevis. And people must understand that, you see. And that is why it frustrates me so much that responsible people would just get on the airways and write in the paper anything. And, you know, sometimes people call and they say, but Dr. Ballantyne, read your paper. This is your own people saying these things about your program. We have to defend our program against our own people. When other people out there saying, you got the best thing since sliced bread, we have to be defending it against our own people. That's not good enough.
But don't you think that came about because there was nothing coming out to the public about it was like clouded in secrecy for some reason?
No, you're journalists, man. A journalist must get to the truth. They must go wherever it leads. My office is open. I've never refused to speak to anybody in the media or anywhere. My office is open to every single person. And if you're a journalist, if you're a responsible journalist, you want to write a story of such importance, you must get the facts. You must get the facts. Look, I'm not here. I don't hold no draft for anybody. You know, I am telling you. You see? And my reputation is at stake. You know, I tell people, I work in Liberia. I was there when the coup. I opposed the president when he wanted me to do certain things. The day after the coup, the soldiers called me to the beach. There were 16 stakes there with men there. They told them, if you was honest as this man, you would not be there. They shot every one of them in my presence. Me, corrupt me, never happened. You all have something that you don't realize how good it is, you see? And you want to play political football with it. Never happened.
We'll take 10 minutes more, please.
Yes, Clive Bacchus, Minifam. Thank you very much for clarifying that, Mr. Ballantyne, Dr. Ballantyne. Now, it seems to me that in a democracy where you have free speech and political jostling, people will have questions that are legitimate questions about this program. And the absence of information from the managers of this program has, to my mind, contributed to lots of doubt and suspicion about the program. So I'm glad that you're having this function today. Let me ask this question then. Are you committing to full transparency and accountability? Will you answer questions? Everyone is not as forthright as Dr. Ballantyne. We've asked many people questions who do not give answers and who refuse to give interviews on very basic issues. So the question for you then is, are you committing to full transparency? Will we have a full list of investments that you propose to make and rationale for that? And how do you evaluate success or effectiveness of your projects? Because how do you guard against a perception that the SIDF can be manipulated into a slush fund for a political party? When you look at the board of the SIDF, are you looking to broaden the base of people you have on your board? I'm not casting aspersions of anyone in the board, but you live in a political environment, and there will be questions about perception of the board, perception of management. So are you committing to full transparency and accountability, which, to my mind, is the best defense against false accusations?
We talk about transparency. I'm not sure if what we did today is not transparency, then I don't know how we define that. There was a lot of allegations about the accounts. Where the accounts, we brought them. I gave you the internet site, the URL to go and get them. They're on there. Go and get them. We did not prepare those accounts ourselves. Those accounts were prepared by PricewaterhouseCoopers. We did not recruit PricewaterhouseCoopers yesterday because we're having a press conference today. We recruited them 6 years ago, and they've been our auditors from day one. We have presented the information in their presence. If this information was not valid or untrue, they would not stand behind those numbers. With respect to the composition of the board, I dare say that that board is one of the most qualified boards in Singers, and if simply being a supporter in your view of a particular party disqualifies a person, then that becomes very subjective, and so then no one should be on any board. And so I don't know if you're saying because somehow you perceive that the people on the board may support a particular party or have a particular political persuasion. We all do, one way or another. They have a right and an entitlement to be on any board, and I certainly am not the one who appoint people to the board. So I don't know when you talk about transparency what you mean, because they have a right by virtue of their qualification. I dare you to think of any board or any administration that has more qualified people than the board that runs the SIDF. So you research it.
Well, I think it's important that I respond to that comment. I never cast any aspersions on any member of the board.
What do you talk about broadening? What is the rationale for broadening of a board then? I mean, what do you mean by that?
Simple. If you look at the board, you have the majority of board members are government employees. Do you have anyone from the private sector, the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, the Christian Council, any of the other social groups to say, well, okay, you have an inclusive board that's broad-based and cannot be perceived by anyone as being perhaps heavily leaning in one direction as a political board?
But you see, you're coming back to exactly the point I was making. That is the point I'm making, that you're making a determination that a person having a particular political persuasion is disqualified from operating transparently. And, well, the point is, we have a board. The board has a responsibility. The board has carried out a responsibility. And so it is for you to determine whether or not that's the right composition, and that's not my call.
Can anyone say how many applications have been approved? And do you think that a lot of the from what we've heard and what we've seen, I think the Prime Minister said we've had applicants from Saudi Arabia, Dubai, those places, whatever. These are a lot of places that are looked upon negatively by the U.S. as in terms of terrorism. Does it shine a negative light on St. Kitts to have these individuals showing up with passports from around, some way across the country, from where they originated?
It doesn't, because people from those countries immigrate to Canada, to the United States, to everywhere. We'll go by the sanctions, any sanction that's out there against these countries. We recognize them. The very same principle and criteria that the Canadians use to admit their people from places like, say, for example, Iran, that's the same criteria that we use. You see, that's why I tell you, this thing go hand in glove with other countries. We couldn't be here like a renegade state and bring in all those people. The Prime Minister got on television, I think it was in November, stated categorically, we were not accepting applications from certain persons. We don't accept applications from people in Afghanistan. Why? Because we cannot get sufficiently good due diligence out of Afghanistan. You don't know if it's the Taliban, you don't know if it's Karzai, you don't know if it's the Mujahideen ruling a place. So we don't accept applications from there. It is our responsibility. We don't go willy-nilly looking for people to come here. We have a criteria. And I could tell you, Ms. Pemberton is there, and she go by the same criteria. As a matter of fact, people tell me she's even harder than I am. You see, because we realize that a small country like ours, the United States not going to allow us to mess up their system. The EU not going to allow us to mess up the system. So we have to be in touch with them. You see, we have to be in touch with them to know what it is that is accepted. You know, and that is why I tell people sometimes we talk about independence and we talk about we're not independent. This is a global community. When the U.S. sneezes, we catch a cold. And this thing with terrorism and so on, money laundering and so on, this is serious, serious business. You know, let me tell you, let me give you a story. These people respect us so much that about a year or so ago, or 18 months ago, when we were on the blacklist for financial services, and we had to sign certain tax treaties with other countries, the French and the British delegation came here to look at our citizenship program. They were so impressed that they left here, went and lobbied their people to sign tax treaties with St. Kitts and Nevis so we could come off the blacklist. You can't do that if you're a rogue state. You can't do that if you're a banana republic. You know? And so people must see that there. Me, I'm not a politician. I'm a professional. And maybe that is why I can't understand the thing that's going on.
You take the final question.
The number of applicants, it is known only now, I would say, to Mrs. Pemberton and the Prime Minister and Cabinet. I don't give nobody that. You know, one minister came to me one time. I tell him, go to the Prime Minister. This thing here, it is under the ministry, it is under the office of the Prime Minister. Those information go to the Prime Minister. If the Prime Minister wants to give it to anybody, he will give it, not me.
The foundation is not giving that information.
The foundation doesn't know. The foundation doesn't know.
The questions, there are two entities represented here. The SIDF is a foundation, private foundation. It is separate and distinct from the Citizenship by Investment Unit. The Citizenship by Investment Unit is a department in the Ministry of Finance under the Prime Minister's office. So although the sessions today were about the two entities, they are not interchangeable. Questions on the SIDF should go to Mr. Crossman. Okay? So when Mr. Ballantyne speaks, the questions you've asked him are in relation to his sojourn at the CIU. He's no longer there. Right? So he's a consultant. But be careful. When you ask him a question, don't transpose that and say that the foundation will give the information. Because the SIDF is a different legal entity.
Right. Yeah. Right, except that we don't know. So if you appreciate what was said earlier today, we are one of 3 options. What we get at the end of a process, the only time I know a person applies is at the end of a month when I get a form that says, Miss Hewlett, Miss John, Miss James, $250,000, that's it, period. I know nothing of the process. I've never interacted with Dr. Ballantyne during his time in office on that matter, and he's here to confirm that. I've never spoken to Ms. Pemberton since she's returned from studying on any matter related to the process. There's no interference. Get that? There's no collaboration. I do not solicit people to come to the SIDF. The application is totally done independent of the foundation. They go to a service provider. The service provider processes the application. It comes through. The due diligence is done. We have no awareness. At the end of the month is the first time that we know that Val Henry had applied, he's approved, and here's a check for $250,000, period. And we do not know how many people bought residences. We do not know how many people were qualified on the special projects under the government. That's not something that we would know. So there's no way that the foundation will know how many applications were processed. If you understand the process, you'd appreciate what I'm saying.
Thank you. I'm happy that my application was approved. I didn't think, though, and by the time the session ended today, I thought, to a great extent, the mission was accomplished in terms of information dissemination. So I never thought that my colleague's question really would have been a complicated one. They first presented this morning outlined some facts regarding numbers of applications, and I believe even approvals with respect to Canada. It really is a simple question, and it is perhaps one of the questions that could help to allay all of the fears that seem to be out there in the community and the myth. The question is very simple. How many applications have been approved, whether in most recent times, in the last couple of years, or for the life of the program? Because I believe the good gentleman gave even some history into, I believe it was about 15 years or something like that. I might be wrong. So this is not to SIDF. This is to the investment program, Citizen Investment Program, as to, no disrespect, but just to make sure. You said the information has been given to the Prime Minister and also Mrs. Pemberton. Is there any way arrangement could be made for the information to be shared as to how many have been approved?
Yeah. I believe the Prime Minister's press secretary is in the room. If I'm not mistaken, about 48 hours ago, there was a statement issued, and I think the statement mentioned something about 300 applications. That question was answered in the press release, I believe that was issued about 48 hours ago by the Prime Minister's office.
Gentlemen, with your permission, let me rework the question again, if you don't mind. I think in your presentation today, Mr. Crossman said that the SIDF, the money from the SIDF comes from the Economic Citizenship Program. That's what he said. Now, we're not asking about the overall number of applicants for economic citizenship. The Prime Minister said about 300 plus a year. I think the question was directed at the SIDF in terms of from what you have, when you crunch your numbers, knowing it's $250 per application, how successful is the program?
With respect, Mr. Backus, we are a fund manager, primarily. We do not count applications, and I'll tell you, I really do not know, and that's the truth. I have never counted applications. I simply look at what money is coming, and we manage money. That's what we do. We're not policy setters.
So the monies that come into SIDF are just from applications, not from approved or rejected?
Well, if you're rejected, then you can't come.
If you're rejected, you're not paying.
No, that's the point. The fee goes for due diligence. You need us. Please visit the site and see all of that information. It's because we have to pay. They have to pay the due diligence people. Yeah.
It would also help if you get a copy of the legislation and read it, so that the question. There is a foundation. Articles of foundation. It's available at the company's registry for a small fee. You can obtain a copy that speaks to what the foundation is. There's a copy of the Foundations Act that will help you understand it. And there's also a copy of the statute of rules and orders relating to the citizenship and investment
and the regulations.
That will explain the process so that the reason why the SIDF will only get the money. They don't know the application, but people who apply for economic citizenship and choose to make a contribution to the SIDF, when they are approved, that money will be forwarded to the SIDF. If they buy a unit, a residential unit, they will pay that money directly to the real estate owner. But the real estate owner, you don't expect to know how many people applied for economic citizenship. They're not going to know that. What the SIDF will know is at the end of a month, if they got $1 million, then they know there is 1 million divided by 250 is the number of people who apply. That's what it is.
Except that we don't.
Yeah. So I was trying to assist.
One last question, please. This is to Mr. Crossman. With the Citizen by Investment Unit being the only funding partner, this is where your source of your funds are coming from. Do you think that's a sustainable way of funding? Because we are going to be indefinitely into the future running a Citizenship by Investment program with maybe 100 applications, successful applications a year or something like that. Is that adequate funding for the SIDF?
It's a really good question, and thank you for that question. And that really comes back to what Dr. Ballantyne has been saying. The success of the program is going to depend on us and how responsible we are as a people in ensuring that the program succeeds. So to the extent that we continue to present the program in a light that is not positive, we're contributing potentially to the demise of the program. Having said that, because we're a fund manager primarily, our role as the foundation moving forward is to ensure sustainability of the funds that are deposited with us. And so to answer that question, the expectation somehow that we have a responsibility to give monies out to people for free because it's sugar money or it's something that we've coined, so those words that we've coined out there will not be the case. Or else we'll simply write a check, divide it by the population and walk away. That's not the objective of the foundation. The foundation is to provide a sustainable platform for growth. So we'd have to identify projects that will give us the needed returns to ensure that the foundation is sustainable into the future. Notwithstanding the fact that it continues to get contributions, we do not know how much longer the contributions will come in at the level that they've been coming in, and we have to protect the foundation against potentially not having the resources that it needs to sustain itself in the future.
Okay, that was our last question. I want to thank all of you for participating. And you know, of course, that we are available. And so any other questions that you wish to have answered, please do contact us. We are very willing to provide you with information.